Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. James Hicks here from Hicks New Media. Welcome to another episode of Perspectives in Focus. Today, I am joined by a gentleman who is a communications expert. He is the founder of an organization called MasterTalk, where he actually provides personal coaching sessions, workshops, and he's also asked to speak on everything related to communication, presentation skills, storytelling skills. We started a little late today because, look, this was an interesting dude, and we're talking behind the scenes about all the different things that he's got going on in his life. I want you to spend some time with me today as we talk to Brenden about what makes him who he is, the practices and the focuses that he follows in terms of preparing for communications, preparing for a presentation, and maybe we can even get into some of his venture capitalist conversations as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Brenden Kumarasamy. Did I get that? I said it right. See, I practiced your last name for a long time, for like a week. I said, I'm gonna make sure I did, but it's crazy. I'm breaking it down into syllables and everything, making sure that I get it right. So I pride myself on making sure I say your name correctly, brother.
I appreciate it, James. Such a pleasure to be here, man. And I love the intro music as well. Nice touch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. How you doing? You all right?
Life is great, man. How about yourself?
You know, we are just trying to make it every day. Every day is a new day. There's a couple of things happening this year. I'm not sure if you're aware, but other than that, we're just trying to progress and move forward. And that whole idea of progressing forward and being positive, having the ability to communicate, that's really where when I saw your information, I said, this young guy has a knack for talking to people, either small groups, large groups, around a particular topic. I've seen a lot of your YouTube stuff. And tell everyone watching, what is MasterTalk?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on, James. So the idea is MasterTalk is a YouTube channel, like you mentioned, that I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. So when I was in business school, I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing football or soccer or some other thing. I clearly, as you can tell by looking at me, I'm not very a sports guy. I never really understood the concept of it. So essentially what happened was I started using that same competitive spirit, but I applied it to presentations. So for 3 years, gave 500 presentations, coached dozens of people, got a job in technology consulting after I graduated. And then I could just kind of ask myself, what do I do with my life now? And in the context of technology, I also did venture when I was in university. I was part of a student-run venture fund called Front Row Ventures. Think of dorm room fund, but in Canada. Okay. So it was basically it's a big fund. The fund's called Real Ventures, and I was managing one of their student funds. It's like a 600K fund. And what I realized in that year of working with startups, that a lot of the best founders who are usually very technical are very good at product, very good at explaining, what they're doing, their tech stack, but they're really bad at communicating their ideas in a way that somebody who doesn't understand the underlying technology can get what they're doing. So essentially, I essentially started MasterTalk for the founders who couldn't afford me. That was actually the main thesis, even if I usually don't talk about it on shows, since it's tech related, this one. That's why I started. For the next Elon Musk, essentially. I'm hoping that the next Elon's 12, he knows I exist, so that he masters his communication skills or her communication skills in their 10s, so that, they go on to communicate their ideas better to the world.
Interesting. And that's a great perspective that you put as well. Everyone who has an idea, has a product, has a whatever widget, right? They've made something. They're passionate about that, and they can talk the zeros and ones. They can talk to an audience technically about that. But when you're talking to that audience and trying to make it, finding the value in it, the what's in it for me piece, right? Being able to say, this is why this is important to you. There can be challenges in that aspect, right? So either is it personality trait? Is it just schooling, learning something like this in class? Or where do your students and where do your folks that come to your sessions, your seminars, where do you see them lacking in terms of that? Is it just not being able to get in front of an audience and communicate those types of things, having kind of stage fright, or is it just not being able to articulate from the technical to the layman side?
Right, and there's a couple of things there, James, but I think a great way of starting the conversation is how to structure a presentation. This could be a pitch deck for investors. This could be, if you're not in the tech industry, just a general presentation. And I call this the puzzle method. So think of public speaking like a jigsaw puzzle, right? Those 1,000-piece puzzles you do with your family, sometimes during Christmas or something, or Thanksgiving, whatever you're into. And the question I have for you is, if you were doing a puzzle, which pieces would you start with first and why?
Well, everyone starts with the outside because they're the easiest.
Exactly. Everyone starts with the outside because they're the easiest, like you mentioned, perfectly. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, why don't we do that in public speaking? We have a presentation in 2 days, and this is also true with a lot of founders I've worked with, by the way. They got a pitch investor meeting in a couple of days. So what do? They shove a bunch of content. In other words, they start with the middle pieces first of the puzzle. And then they get to their last slide and they go, thanks. Every single time. So the key to public speaking, James, is understanding the following. Solve it like you would a jigsaw puzzle. Start with the edges first. Do the introduction 50 to 100 times. That'll take you 2 hours, max. Do the conclusion 50 to 100 times. Because what's a great movie with a terrible ending? A terrible movie. So do the same thing. And then after, with the confidence that you have, then tackle the middle. But remember, much like puzzles, you don't want to do a 1,000-piece puzzle alone. Get other founders, get different perspectives. Ask me, I do that for free just to promote my channel. Just get a team together to push for the middle. That's how you solve the public speaking puzzle.
Interesting. And do you find, because that's a whole different dynamic, right? Do you find that training an old dog to this new trick, right? Do you find that difficult with folks who are seasoned, a little further on in their careers, or as you had mentioned, right, you're looking for the kind of that younger generation? Is it easier to reach to them because they're not already skewed by a whole bunch of already principles that they've learned from the workforce, those kind of things?
Right, that's a great question. So one way of thinking about this, at least from my experience, the people who are younger than me are usually people who watch my videos, with some exceptions, and the people that are older than me are usually clients of mine. So when I think about both of those perspectives, the people who are younger than me that I just give advice to for free because they're running a startup, they're just getting started or something, they're listening, they're digesting, they're absorbing every tip because they see me as credible. They go, oh well, this guy's been VC and all that stuff. But the people who are much older than me, right? They look at me very differently. They go, who's this kid? He's going to tell me how to. So for them, the strategy is very different. Well, actually, I have the fortune now I don't have to work with people who don't respect my work. But I guess when I started, my approach,
because you've already laid that groundwork, right? So you're already to a point where you've got the credibility, I guess we'd say, right?
Exactly. Like I've demonstrated my value in the market. But I think the advice I have for young people out there who are trying to build that is 2 things. One, never sell it to someone who doesn't want to be sold. You won't see me reaching out to the SVP of Bank of America. Like I just won't do it. Right? It's not worth it. Even if they found me credible, they already have other speech coaches. It doesn't make sense to bring me on and to sell me to the board and all that stuff. Doesn't make sense. So don't sell someone who doesn't want to be sold. But the other part that's more important is show, don't tell. Right? I don't tell people that I know my stuff. I don't tell people that I know how to solve people's pitch decks. I don't tell people that I know I can make them communicate better. I'll show you. I'll be like, I'll watch one of your keynotes on YouTube. I'll poke 60 holes in them, and then I'll just send you the feedback. And they'll always reply with, how much do you charge? Right? So show, don't tell.
So you're the teacher with the red pen going through each slide on my deck and making sure, forget punctuation. It's delivery. It's am I looking straight into camera? Those kinds of things. But that needs to happen though, right? Because I think forget just VCs, forget an entrepreneur with a pitch deck. I mean, that's a skill that needs to happen on every day-to-day basis, right? So professional and personal, being able to effectively communicate. And if no one really tells you what you can't see, but what you've become accustomed to doing, then you're not going to progress forward, right? So you're essentially helping us perfect and better ourselves. you're doing the Apple, right? You're giving us something we need before we even know we need it.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you say it. I think what's fascinating about this show is I can look at it through two different lenses, which I usually don't do. But in the tech side of things, when we think about communication, we just go, oh, right, I guess it's something I need to do. I'm not really sure if it's something I have to do. So let me tell you exactly, if you're a tech founder listening, why you need to master this. The reason is because not all venture capitalists are entrepreneurs. In fact, a lot of them, right, and especially if you don't live in San Francisco, but most of them around the world are actually have no idea what's happening in the tech space. They're traditional VCs. So we're talking investment bankers, finance people, consultants at McKinsey, people who had very traditional backgrounds, the MBA type characters who then go into VC. So in my opinion, for those types of people, you actually know more about where the future is going than they do. But based on their internal beliefs of who they were before, they're looking for the same cues, even if those cues are wrong. So for example, if you went to Harvard, that means something to a traditional VC. The entrepreneur VC who exited, Zappos, right? If Tony Hsieh is looking at your business, he doesn't care if you have a bachelor's degree, because he knows what the markers are. Do you have a problem? Or are you solving the problem? But for the traditional VC, they're looking for clean slides. They're looking for all of those things. So my advice is, I'm in the same camp as you. Maybe it's not the most important thing. Your product is obviously the priority, but put all the coins in your basket. Like put all the eggs in your corner. Like increase your probability as much as possible, especially today, since the fundraising environment is much different than it was in 2019, literally a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's my advice for tech people. For general people, though, understand, and this is true with the tech people too, that communication has very little to do with presentations. It's everything. It's the tough conversation that you have with your spouse or your husband or your partner, your children. It's the dinners that you have with the people that you love. It's the way that you explain your business at a networking cocktail, though virtually now. It's everything that you do. So understand that by mastering communication, it'll return back a lot in whatever the dream you have.
And I always tell folks, irregardless of what position that you're in or what industry, and everyone's in sales, right? If you think about it at kind of the core level, we're selling ourselves, we're selling a product, we're selling a service, we're selling our methodologies, our mentality, all of that. So we're all constantly selling something, even consciously or unconsciously. And I think if you're not aware of that, you can't communicate effectively whatever that message is that you're trying to push to someone. So if you go through that, where again, it's not just what's in it for me, it's what's in it for you as well, and trying to find a means of bringing value to the person that you're talking to. That's where you win. That's where you cross kind of that someone with the Heisman and holding you back and saying, you know what, you've got me for 3 minutes, I'm not paying attention, I'm leaving, kind of thing.
I'm with you. I think the follow-up to what you're saying that I completely agree with is founders need to realize that a pitch is not some demo day presentation where they pizzazz a group of people. A pitch is an everyday thing. You're pitching to new employees to work for you. You're pitching to investors who want to invest in you. You're pitching to founders if you need people to add to your team. You're pitching to everybody, customers, clients. So you need to learn how to explain your business, and like you said, in a 3-minute version, in a 30-second version, in many different ways, so that you can appeal to the right target that you're speaking to.
So now let me ask you a question, because you've got 5 basic tips and tricks for mastering your communication skills. Go over those tips in terms of how folks can, from a layman's perspective, again, just being able to put those into action today. What are those 5 tips and tricks that you have out there?
Absolutely. Happy to share that, James. So the first one is silences. So silences means great speakers use pauses to emphasize key messages in their pitch. So let's say, I want to emphasize this part or that part. I'm using pauses to effectively engage you, to show you that this part right here matters. So how do you do that? In my opinion, there's many ways of going about it, but the trick that I have to share is called the forced silence drill. Essentially, what you do is you can do this with a partner, you can do this alone, but the idea is to have someone pause you forcefully. So let's say you give a presentation. This could be a pitch, this could be an elevator pitch, whatever you're trying to work on. Do it twice. One time, as you normally would, record it. And then second time, have somebody pause you. Here's the punchline. You actually don't need a speech coach for this. All you need is the other partner to have watched the first version. So let's say I'm doing this with James. James watches me present. And then the second version, James goes, Brendan's going a bit too fast here at the beginning, at the end, in the middle. So when he presents this again, James just pauses me and pauses me again. And whenever he points the finger, I have to pause. But what's interesting is 100% of the time, when the individual watches both recordings, they're always shocked because the second version with James pausing me sounds infinitely better than the first one. So by realizing that we sound better with pause, we go, wow, we actually do sound better with this stuff. Then we start practicing it. That's number one. And then, please go ahead.
Because this is incredibly fascinating to me. So I even also wonder if the one with the drill with the pauses may even be shorter. And the reason that I say that is we're speeding through, we're excited, we've got a topic we want to get out. A lot of times we'll stutter. That's where the ums and the ahs come in, right? So there's that air of non-productive communication. But if I'm pausing and letting something that I say, letting a topic or letting something resonate, I'm focused and I'm able to slow down the speech. I'm able to have a more deliberate conversation instead of it being all over the place. But again, a whole bunch of those types. I'm reading into this, and hopefully I'm going the right way. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead, Brenden.
No, please do. Or else it's just going to be a monologue with myself. No, it's always a pleasure, and I completely agree with that. So just an advanced tip here for those who want to push this a bit further, and this is going to be especially true for the tech community. This is called the long stares exercise. So essentially what you do is you go up to somebody that you love in your house and you stare at them for 3 minutes and you don't say a word. Most people cannot do this, especially if you're a developer, because you're spending all day coding. You're not spending enough time staring at people because you don't go to enough social events. And what this does, even if it seems childish, is it makes you more comfortable in the silence. So when you go back to your actual presentations and you pause for 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, it's much easier for you to do that. Whereas normally you wouldn't be able to. Number 2, ums and ahs.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
It's not like I set you up or anything, right there, but okay.
Right, it's the the so's, the likes. Yeah. Whatever flavor of ice cream you're into, right? So the idea with ums and ahs is to realize the following: by improving your ability to silence and pause for longer periods of time, your ability to say less filler words will get better. Because if I can use the pause, I can leverage it to get rid of the ums and ahs. Right. So a good way of thinking about this is that the very same pause. So let's kind of think of it differently, actually. When I say a filler word, the reason I say it is to fill up space to figure out what I need to say next. So let's say I'm talking to you right now, James, and I forget what I want to say next. I go, right. That's what I was supposed to say. So I use filler words to buy time. This is what we all do. Whereas what great speakers do, exceptional speakers do, is that same time they say nothing. They fill it with absolutely nothing. So let's say I don't know what I want to say next. All I have to say is absolutely nothing. And then I keep talking. So the way that you do that is you get better by getting more comfortable at pausing in general. And then you can infiltrate those into your presentations so that you say less filler words. Simple cause and effect, right? Do one, get the other. Does that make sense on your end?
No, that does. And again, it's the fact that you said, it is so simple. And again, it's something that you typically would not think about, but it's incredibly powerful when you start honing these skills and when you start utilizing these tools and take these out of your toolbox. So, okay.
Absolutely. And then there's number 3, right? Audience mastery. Okay. For audience, all you really need to know is this. Great speakers think about their audience, but the best speakers in the world obsess over them. They understand the very psychology of who they are and communicate it back to them. And the best tech founders in the world are very customer obsessed, but even the best can't transition that obsession with the product into their obsession with the presentation. They don't have the same love for the product as they do for presenting the product, which is always fascinating for me. But the idea is simple for anyone watching. If you care enough about the audience, the answers and how you need to communicate, they'll tell you. Right? So when I started MasterTalk, I had like 7 video ideas. And then my audience kind of, especially one in particular, kind of just said, Brenden, why don't you just make videos on breaking down other speakers? And I just looked at him and said, right. I should probably do that. That's a good idea. Right. So the idea is by listening to your audience, by understanding their dreams, their aspirations, who they are, who they want to be at an obsessive level, it allows you to get better at honing your message back to them. So a good easy thing that you can do right now that very little founders do is they don't have long dinners, or I guess virtual coffees in this case, with their core customer base or the core audience that they present to.
Okay. Interesting.
So if you use me as an example, there is nobody in my industry who has had more conversations with 8-year-olds about public speaking. There's just nobody. Right. Mm-hmm. So for example, so that means I have insights on the industry that nobody else does. So I'll give you an example. I give a workshop to a couple of 8-year-olds, and I thought 8 to like 15-year-olds, and I thought it was super simple in the ways I'm explaining it. And they came up to me and they just said, "What's a CEO?" And I just went, "Right. What is a CEO?" Right. I have no idea. I should probably not use that word in a presentation. So just by understanding their psychology, it helps me make better YouTube videos. But since nobody's hitting that demographic on the platform, it gives me a huge competitive edge that nobody in public speaking coaching has on YouTube. So that's just a tiny example. I can use a tech example. Airbnb, we have to understand with the company that before Airbnb existed, sleeping at strangers' houses and paying them was a thing. Like VRBO, Expedia, like that existed. So what did Airbnb do differently than everyone else? They didn't create something new. Sleeping at strangers' houses and asking them to pay for it was always a thing. But they realized when talking to their users, especially the first 100 in New York City, they noticed that the biggest thing that scales this type of service is belonging and trust. And that is why Airbnb's motto is the following. We want everyone to belong anywhere, everywhere, right? But they only got that from talking to their users. If they never talked to their users, because they were so obsessed by their users that they took a flight from San Francisco during Y Combinator, for those who are listening, to New York City and took photographs of all 100 of their Airbnb listings because they needed professional photography. And they had lunches and dinners with all 100 of them, do things that don't scale, right? So that basically, through that information, they killed their competition. Now, where else do you stay for a hotel? You only go to Airbnb. Barely nobody uses VRBO, right? Because they understand.
That's true. It's become synonymous really with, because you trust. They've got, what is it? They call them the super hosts, right? So you trust that whole model that they've built. You trust that there's going to be remediation if there's a problem with the location and things of that nature. So that really does make sense. And I didn't realize that they went to that extent, right? To understand the client and the person that their message was actually geared for, right? Everyone, again, can have a pitch. Everyone can have a product, can have a service. But if you don't tailor that for your actual audience, you're going to get left in second, third, or fourth place, like some of the other companies that you mentioned, as opposed to Airbnb.
Right, which means you'll die in this industry, anyways.
In 2020, and it's tough. This year, if we want to be even more specific, it's going to be pretty tough for some of those other organizations to come out of this in the black, because no one is going out anywhere for the most part, and only that strong brand awareness, only that strong appreciation for the product and the service provided, that'll bring me back there once all of this is done with. But the other ones,
right,
fly by night.
Right, and just to give you another example, because we were talking about Zoom before we started. A lot of people look at Zoom's success now. They look at Eric Yuan, who's the founder of the company. They go, "Oh
Yeah.
wow, this guy's like super successful," but they don't understand the backstory. Like this guy used to work at WebEx. He was a senior vice president there. He pitched Zoom to them, and they told him he was an idiot. And he got so frustrated that he left and started Zoom and crushed them. Right, so that's the point. The best founders on the planet and also the best speakers. It's kind of cool. I'm talking by like two different layers. It's fun.
I love it. You got kind of a split brain
Yeah,
going on right now.
I usually don't do such shows. Usually one angle. But the idea is the best founders and the best speakers are A, obsessed about their audience, and B, are equally as obsessive of communicating what the customer wants back to them in a presentation. And obviously Steve Jobs is another good example. But the idea is master your audience. And here's a couple of questions you can use to start with this. 1, simple, who's your audience? 2, what is the goal of the presentation? And more specifically, what are the needs and expectations of that audience? So if you think about me, sure, I present public speaking to different crowds, but the needs and expectations of the 7-year-old girl I was talking about earlier is very different than the Fortune 500 executive that I coach, right? So those are all different. Number 3, how are you going to communicate your ideas in a way that gets people excited to talk about them? It's easy coming up with content. You can go on internet. You can go on, look at your tech stack. You can figure all that stuff, put it on a bunch of slides. If you can't communicate it in a way that people want to listen to you, then you might as well keep trying because people are just not going to follow you. So that's number 3.
Well, give some examples of that because, I mean, it's almost easier said than done, to be honest with you, right? Because, again, when you're standing in front of a group, an audience, either investors or subject matter experts, things of that, you're presenting a solution or a pitch or whatever the case may be, it's hard to raise that bar. Some folks can do it. I'm not too bad. I can do it pretty well too. I'm gonna be modest, but when I tell my wife when I'm in front of the stage, I do the jazz hands and we make it happen. But it's hard to learn that. I don't think I could have learned that. I think it's something that's innate to you as well, right? You've got to have something about your personality that allows you to, when the lights go on, flip the switch and kind of go and rise up to be a different level. So give me some examples of, again, how to make that into reality. Yeah, it's easy to say, but how do you actually put that into action?
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about that. So the idea is simple. Let's take the two people I gave. 7-year-old Rebecca, 57-year-old Tim. Okay, let's run that example. So Rebecca tugs my shirt. Okay, at the end of my workshop, she comes up to me and she said the following: Brenden, how do I learn how to speak like you? So any great speaker will kind of just look at her and say, oh, she wants to get better. She wants some public speaking tips. But a world-class speaker knows without a doubt that what Rebecca is asking for has nothing to do with public speaking, but rather a boost in confidence. What Rebecca's actually saying is the following. Let's actually pretend she's 10, not 7, actually. So what she's saying is that she's saying, Brenden, for the past 10 years of my life, nobody told me I was a great speaker. Could you be the first one? That requires incredible amounts of empathy. So the great speaker pats her on the head and goes, keep going, kid. But the best speaker in the world does, or one of the best. They crouch down, they look at Rebecca in the eyes, and they say the following. Well, Rebecca, when I was 5 years old, I sucked at communication. So trust me, you're already really good. But I'll tell you a secret that you shouldn't tell anyone else. Let's keep between us. If you share that beautiful smile of yours to the world, I think that you'll be an incredible speaker. What do you think? But because I'm well dressed and I have a nice suit on that day, she gets red in the face and then presents. Why? Because I gave her what she wanted. That's an example of Brendan's craziness here. But the idea is understand from that example, and then I'll use Tim as well as a contrast here. But the idea is understand how psychotic I am about my audience. Like, I'm so crazy that I understand Rebecca as much as she understands herself, and I just met her.
Yeah.
Right? That's how you get better. It's extreme empathy. Now, Tim is the same thing. And notice another thing I'm doing is role playing. I'm actually playing the characters of that thing. I actually force a lot of my clients to do that. So it's something you should try as well. because it just breaks you out of your shell of the boredom of presentations that we're prisoners of in this industry. So Tim is the same thing. So Tim, I walk into Tim's office and this is what it sounds like. Yeah, Brenden, come over here. Yeah, I got 10 minutes, actually 7. Why do you look like you're 16 anyways? Go through some of the presentation decks that I suggested you and don't waste my time. So how I respond to Tim is very different, right? I look at Tim and I say, Tim, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I'd love to spend 7 to 8 minutes just going through 2 or 3 key areas of improvement that I have for your presentation deck. And I would love for you to implement them so that you can increase your sales funnel for the next meetings that you have coming up for today. So notice how I'm extremely professional in the way that I'm speaking to Tim. Though for the record, I usually don't coach people like Tim anymore. But the point that I'm driving is even if I'm presenting the same content, that's the same content to both of them. Yeah. To a certain extent, they both want confidence, but their needs and expectations are completely different. Tim's looking for a result, and Rebecca's looking for a push to do better and be better. So how does this apply back to you? If you're a founder, this means you better understand all of the stakeholders of your business, investor, customer, founder, employee, what their incentives are, what are they motivated by. And if you have no clue how to do this, you need to ask someone who does. That means somebody in the company who can come up to you and tell you it, provided, and if you're not willing to listen, you're just a bad founder. But the idea is, you need to be willing. If you don't have the data, you need to ask someone who has the data. Right. And I do that with a lot of startups. They go like, oh, well, Brenden, what do you think of this? And I'm like, guys, you need to be thinking about this. And I'm like crazy and stuff. But anyways, the point is you need to understand all those funnels and ask yourself those questions. And if you don't know, or if you're not sure how to do this, start with the simple conversation. I don't have hour-long dinners with 8-year-olds. I just sit next to them 30 minutes before my kid and I go, hey, how's it going? I'm Brenden. They're like, oh, you're the speaker. And I just talk to them for 30 minutes. You just listen to them. And you start to realize very quickly, especially in her case, that, hey, if I say too much things, like she's not going to understand a single thing of what I'm saying. Right. I better keep this like simple, happy, go lucky, like encouraging. Whereas when I'm with my executives, I'm like throwing them against the wall. It's like, you guys suck. Like get better. Right. So it's different. Very different energies. So hopefully.
Well, and you think about it too. It's you have to adapt the message for the audience. I think that's kind of really what you're saying, and kind of as I was saying, being able to break it down to different terms. Yeah, everyone who is technical can talk the technical piece and can talk about the bits and the bytes, the zeros and ones, how to code or what the widget will do, but explaining it to them from a solutions perspective, explaining it to them from a business perspective, the what's in it for me, not what's in it for you, not me type of thing, how what we're talking about brings value to you. That's a whole different kind of conversation. You can have that with that 10-year-old, and you can have that with Crazy Tim as well, but
I'll call him Crazy Tim from now.
You probably are much more professional in that conversation than I would. I'd probably thrown this water on him and said, just no, but I won't do that. I'm curious. So let me ask you about. So we've talked about the business in terms of what you do, who you talk to, and how you provide that information. I'm going to ask you a 2020 question. How has this whole stoppage of the world affected your business, right? Because again, you're not able to go out now and actually have many of those face-to-face direct meetings, and body language, right, is so key in terms of communication and presentation. That direct eye contact is so key. It's tough on Zoom and video conferencing. How has the year of COVID affected MasterTalk?
Right. So definitely a couple of things there. So easy one, we can just get out right of the way. So eye contact. The only tip I had, because all of a sudden my video doesn't apply anymore since it's virtual, is keep your eyes on the lens at all time. The best way to do that is put a picture of somebody that you love just on top of the lens, or put something like a food or something, and it's easy. So you always remember to look. You're always like, oh, look at that pizza up over there. You're like, oh, it's tasty. Just a small trick I got from somebody else. So that takes that care of that. But for COVID in general,
I'll put my Rocky Road ice cream, a picture of my Rocky Road right there. I won't know what you're talking about because I'll be focusing on that. But that's okay.
you just focus on the Rocky Road or something like that. Food, I don't know, partner, I don't know, kids, whatever you want, whatever works. So that's one. And the other thing, you asked me about COVID. Jeez, what's not been going right, COVID? But anyways, the point is, times are challenging. Absolutely. I woke up to a huge loss of revenue. Like all my speaking engagements just went to zero. I kind of just went, what do I do? But luckily, I still had my day job, so I wasn't too worried. But the key message that I have for people is the following: understand who the real enemy is. A lot of people, when I ask them, who's your enemy, James? Who's your enemy, Michael? Who's your enemy, Julie? They always respond something like this. That guy who cut me off in traffic? My wife has been doing this. My husband has been doing that. I was like, wait, whoa, why are you bringing your partner into this? I just asked you who the enemy was. But the point that I'm trying to drive is that we all have the same enemy. And that enemy is time. You can throw money at time. You can yell at time. You can scream at time.
Yeah.
You can tell time to F off. You can tell a bunch of things to time. Time always wins in the end. And for some reason, James, a lot of people are using 2020 as an excuse to do nothing. They go, oh, yeah, 2020 is canceled. As if you could go to a bank and get a loan back for it. Hey, can you just add a year to my lifespan? Is that like a possibility? What interest do I have to pay? You can't do it.
I have not heard of that just yet, yeah.
That's the point. So was I depressed for a couple of days? Absolutely. I mean, I worked really hard to build that practice up. So it wasn't too fun. But I asked myself, okay, how do I reinvest this time? What can I do? So I gathered a bunch of people that I knew, a lot of smart friends of mine. I just said, what should I do, guys? And they said, well, your focus has always been on YouTube, so just start creating content a lot more. So I started writing my content years in advance. I'm currently writing my content for 2023 as of this recording, right? So that's how far I am. So I'm just writing a YouTube script every day because I can't fly out anymore, right? That's one. 2, guest on 1,000 podcasts. This is probably my 300th show. I usually never say yes to podcasts usually, right? But now, got all the time in the world. So let's just.
Your commute is 0 right now. So, might as well roll out of bed. And
might as well just roll out a bunch of podcasts as possible. Then when I'm flying out again, I start saying no again. So that's 2. Yeah. And then 3, pivot very quickly from a speaking business to a coaching business. So once again, I usually don't take a lot of coaching clients because it's a lot of time investment, right? Versus making a video or giving a speech and not being accountable to the result, though I can deliver it, obviously. But now, since I was forced to transition, and now now my revenue is a lot better than it was pre-COVID. But I think the idea that the message I want to share with people is the people that win, right? This is entrepreneurship life anywhere, are the people that know how to reinvest their time, are the people who know how to optimize it, and the people that are ultimately going to win when COVID is over. Because everyone else, who has been doing nothing, not taking action, when COVID's over, they're walking. They're like, finally, COVID's over. I'm going to go travel. The people have been grinding their faces off when COVID is over. Trust me, James, I'm sprinting. I know exactly what my next moves are. So it's all mindset at the end of the day.
And I will say, so that really was kind of a trick question, a setup question, just to see where your mentality was. And I kind of sensed it, but I really wanted to do the doubting Thomas and actually hear it, right? Because again, if you sit and you rest on your laurels and you say 2020 has been canceled, if you sit in those doldrums, if you sit in that negativity and that darkness, you will not be able to progress and move forward when the time does come that we are able to get out and do things again. So stay active, stay hungry, right? And I think we've got that right from an entrepreneur's perspective and folks that are building businesses, building communications and things of that nature. But for the folks who are staying at home with the lights off, not going outside, afraid of everything, be aware, but don't be stagnant, right? Do not be stagnant. Don't let this necessarily end your forward progression. So I really like how you summarize kind of the things that you're doing to be ready. You said, 2023, you're already making content for the next 2 years. I mean, that's amazing, right?
Right. And one concrete example I can give people to kind of define mindset, because I know a lot of people talk mindset, but they don't really explain it in concrete terms. Think about the speaking business, right? There's 2 perspectives you can take right now. The first perspective, which most speakers have taken, is they go, well, the speaking business is dead, right? There's no more events. Events are gone. Events are over. My dream of being a speaker is over. I quit. And they throw in the towel. Whereas a very tiny percentage of speakers go, this is the best opportunity for any speaker in the world right now. You can do a bunch of online events. You can do 10 events a day instead of 1. You can do 10 podcast interviews a day. So when the
Yeah.
gates open again and those opportunities come up, and you're the first person people think of because everyone else quit, right? So when I'm done, like when COVID's over, I'm gonna have a full booked year. Right? It's over. I'm gonna be too much. Like there's gonna be too many people.
You are gonna need a break, right? Because
Yeah,
you stayed mobile and you stayed active. That's really cool.
exactly.
Really
Business
cool.
is booming, man.
So where is that? Where can folks find you? I know I'll put the site up, but talk to us about again. What are really the next tangible steps for you, Brenden, and for MasterTalk in and of itself? Besides just making the content for the next couple of years, what's in the short term?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the ultimate goal of MasterTalk is to live in a world where nobody's scared of public speaking. So I want to be the modern day Dale Carnegie. And I think the unfortunate story of Dale's work is Dale was born in the wrong time period of history. We don't have a Dale Carnegie YouTube channel. We don't have a Dale Carnegie podcast. And I want to be that person for the world so that when I'm dead, people can learn from me forever. So if you're someone who's a founder, someone who's anybody who wants to get better at communication, check out the YouTube channel, which is MasterTalk in one word. I share all my content for free. Pretty much 99% of it I give away. And if you want to message me directly, you want to ask me for tips, especially if you're a founder, you want me to look at your pitch deck, I'll do it for free. You can just message me directly on Instagram. So the handle for that is Master Your Talk.
Yeah, I will definitely put those links in the show notes so folks can get in contact with you, because I mean the work that you are doing is good work, right? And I think it's necessary work, and I really like the fact that you're tapping a market, the youngsters, that get them before they get too disheveled and too focused on one particular path, right? Get them while you can still mold them and have the conversations. It's easier to teach the young dog the tricks than the old dog, that kind of thing. And having professionals, business folks, mentors, especially with our teens, is incredibly powerful. And having those mentors to help with strategies for life, for business, for communication, I think is also valuable. So what you're doing, I think it should be commended, and I want to say we all thank you for that, sir.
I appreciate that, James. Thanks for having me on.
Brenden, you're a good man. Let's stay in touch. I wish you well. Stay safe during this COVID period, and like I say, I will put all of your contact information in the show notes, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Likewise, brother.
Be good.